washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to tune in, chime in, add your 2 cents to the program throughout the duration. Of course, the comments and other things over on our social media reacts as well, of course, are one of the better ways to do so throughout the duration. But we'll have those phone lines open a little bit later in the show, as we normally do. And I feel like I need to find another phrase besides jam-packed, because I feel like we're going to stretch that phrase to its limit, either both today and throughout the rest of these coming days, with a whole lot going on. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the immigration and border security issues, more feedback, more efforts, more situations and updates on them from the downtown, specifically Segundo Barrio area. And yeah, Proposition K, the early voting having concluded now, some of the stats already out showing some interesting numbers so far. Again, it's all in perspective, right? Because we're at, by my calculations, about a 7.5% voter turnout, depending on how you count the actual mail-in ballots and those kind of things. But there's also, the demographics and breakdowns of it, and we'll be delving further into Proposition K. Specifically, we have certainly been talking about those groups and entities that have been very involved, and at the very least responsible for at least part of the stacks of paper I've got in front of me when it comes to the mailers on this. There's definitely a lot to delve in there, and that will be our interview today. We're going to be visiting with Andrea Hutchins, the CEO of the El Paso Chamber, on those positions and much, much more. But also, we got a lot more going on with, again, the NMSU situation and the hazing controversy continuing on as victims speak out, as the state also sends a letter to NMSU addressing part of that. We also got, just several other so small things coming in from the state when it comes to the continued legislative session and the possible things and issues that are coming at us. We are getting towards the end of the already feverish pace of the state legislature, as it's sine die time, meaning that if it doesn't happen soon, it ain't gonna, unless they come back for a special session, of which the specter is increasingly looming. So that's a few minutes to say it. Crammed is another one that is being put forth there. Chock full. There's a whole lot of synonyms, but even those are seeming to fall a little bit short, as we again have quite a lot going on and affecting us here in the borderlands. So those tuning in, chiming in with us, Amber Banda with the Rock On, appreciate it. Sean Gardner with the Guten Tag to you as well. And of course, more of the likes and reacts, including Sean Gardner and Flaco Jimenez over there on the Facebook primarily. There's just, I'll be surprised if we get to all of these topics today, so we'll do our level best. So, couple of things going on. And also City of El Paso having some interesting reviews of fuel usage. Article title from our news partners over at KFOX 14. Review finds, quote, significant fuel usage, end quote, by two said El Paso City Council members on taxpayers' dime. Now, this does include current and former City Council members, and that our news partners at KFOX 14 will be doing a more detailed breakdown in, though the two major headlines is that two council members are, again, having those significant fuel usage. Again, current City Rep Cassandra Hernandez, District 3, purchased the most fuel, totaling, let's call it 1,900 gallons and change, and 112 transactions at a cost of $6,691.49, to be very specific, as we also have a Bernadette Bandicle with the hey, hey chiming in as well. And the reason that this comes at issue is that, of course, putting out of resources for official use is reasonable, but the review stated, quote, the data indicates two or more vehicles are being fueled. The amount of fuel purchased by District 3 for calendar year 2022 appears excessive. And then for District 6, in the last election cycle, at the very least, before the last one, I guess I should say, represented at that point in time by former Rep. Claudio Rodriguez, the second highest amount, totaling about, let's call it just shy of 1,500 gallons, cost of about $5,200. And as noted by our news partners there, gas cards are used by city staff, are funded by city and taxpayers. They are intended for work use only. They got some of the documentation, the 24-page document detailing the transactions, the amounts, the number of purchases over the periods of days, and the frequency of the use of this. And so they're going to be having more breakdown on that. But let's just say it doesn't seem like a great look, at least from some of those initial actual conclusions coming out of it. But of course, Title 42 continues to be, and the anticipated end of it, one of those most hotly both debated, anticipated. There's a whole lot of adjectives you could put onto it. But the major impacts that we are seeing here in the city of El Paso, of course, primarily focused around the Segundo Barrio area. Again, our news partners from KFOX 14 doing a lot of coverage, including aerial views, drone video of the situation, particularly centered around Sacred Heart Church in the Segundo Barrio area, that there are estimated to be more than 1,000 that are in and around the immediate area of the church. Now, of course, the city of El Paso does have the no camping rule that they have been reportedly still enforcing. Again, I haven't seen many structures, temporary or otherwise, being erected as part of this, but there's, of course, a lot more of the issues and policy and still a significant law enforcement presence that come along here. Now, of course, when it comes to the shelters, either the temporary ones, the ones the city is ready to put up, etc., not in terms of like on the street, but I mean, there have been the couple of currently vacant schools that have been mentioned, as well as the potential use of the Civic Center, other areas, including hotels, those kind of things. City and county cannot help undocumented migrants because they will lose their federal funding if they were to do so, putting that part of the response primarily on the non-governmental organizations that don't have those same kind of restrictions. So both views from on the street and in the air over there from our news partners at KFOX 14. Go and check those out, as there is more policies that are being explored, even if there's also more response to them. It's noted that, of course, states, and not the state rep, but a representative for the state of Texas, Tony Gonzalez from the Texas 23rd Congressional District, as he has announced that he is opening the district office in El Paso, specifically going to be doing it, and did it earlier today. Near the historic Casa Ortiz at the heart of the Mission Trail. Also speaking to our news partners at KFOX 14 about this, article titled Rep. Gonzalez says Biden administration should send 1,500 judges instead of troops to the border, highlighting at least in part the situation that, sure, enforcement and the ability to do so is important, but the real thing that's going to come with the end of Title 42 is absolutely going to be an increasing amount of the backlog. Some reports I've seen have been putting it upwards of, in some cases, in some locations where these cases are progressing, years, if not better part of decades. So seeing more of that when it comes to the actual immigration courts, because, of course, Title 42 was a removal order, and there was not much processing that came, at the very least, nothing compared to what Title 8, which does have more immediate removal orders, but still involves progression through that. So just the juxtaposition of the amount of time and administrative energy, let's put it that way, it takes between the two is certainly going to be significant. And again, Rep. Gonzalez saying to our news partners at KFOX 14, quote, if you walk out there, you see pretty much that Title 42 is already ended. I've seen this 3 or 4 times right before it comes up to the deadline is the worst, the eye of the storm. It feels like it's lawlessness. And saying that he does advocate for migrants getting their hearing within days and not years, among other things. Again, focus on the sending of judges, among other things. So there's a lot more going on here today, including more from NMSU on what is going on with their hazing allegations and the controversy surrounding that. But already due for that first break of this hour right now, as we also have Louis Pinato and Willie Jenkins, hello, P, chiming with us over on the social media. Again, also those dropping those likes and reacts, Ronaldo Rivera, James Holmes as well. Appreciate all that as we're going to take that first break of this hour right now. Coming out of this break, delving more into the elections and specifically Proposition K. Yeah, I know that ever so slightly mentioned item that you may have heard of once or twice only in passing. We'll be delving even further into it than we have with some other of the proponents and opponents. Speaking with the El Paso Chamber, specifically Andrea Hutchins, the CEO and president of the same, about their positions on this, and of course delving into the issues. So let's take that break right now. Coming out of this, more Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Keep the comments going. We'll pop those up as is relevant and or interesting, and then also of course phone lines a little bit later in the show as we normally do. So in any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Still seeing a lot of slow traffic, both directions on the I-10 through downtown. I-10 eastbound Mesa to Dallas, 19-minute delays. 20-minute delays, I-10 westbound Wrestler up to Trans Mountain. Traffic's moving slow on Mesa Street, north and southbound. From Desert Boulevard to the downtown exits, 5-minute delays. An accident, police on the scene, Gateway south at Dyer. And a crash downtown with injuries, Stanton at Maine. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
How could $1,000 change your life?
I could buy eggs.
Then listen for inflation compensation. Your chance to win $1,000 to combat high prices.
Honey, we're going to have eggs.
Yes! It's excellent. Be listening for your chance to win $1,000 with inflation compensation.
Listen for your chance to win $1,000 every hour, 9 through 5 p. with the inflation compensation on News Radio 690 AM. Brought to you by Charlie Clark Nissan and Charlie Clark Infinity of El Paso.
Orale!
This report is sponsored by the Tudor Dixon Podcast.
Coming up on the next episode of the Tudor Dixon Podcast, Kyle Olson joins the show to talk about the madness at Michigan State University. Banned words? Are our kids too sensitive? Be sure to catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you know you can now build a low-maintenance deck using stone with Tanzite Stone Decking? Tanzite Stone does not use any plastic whatsoever. It is decking that's naturally durable, just like everything made with stone. Tanzite stone doesn't scratch at all. The color will never fade. It is not slippery, even when wet. And it stays cool in the sun. Since Tanzite decking is made of stone, it's virtually indestructible. That's why we guarantee it with a lifetime warranty. Discover how incredibly durable and beautiful a stone deck can be. Go to Tanzite.com. That's TANZITE.com. Online, you'll see how it easily installs over any regular wood deck structure, and you can order a sample to test it for yourself. Build a deck with the durability of stone at Tanzite.com. That's TANZITE.com.
At El Paso Electric, we're working to meet our goal of providing 100% carbon-free energy by 2045. By next year, we'll double our renewable energy resources. In 2 years, we'll more than triple it. In 3 years, our solar output will increase almost 8 times. We're already 50% carbon-free in 2023, but there's more work to do. Because a clean energy future is more than a goal. It's a reality we're working towards every day. Visit epelectric.com/clean energy to see our plan.
Attorney CPA Joe Cordell. Divorce forces a father to focus on what's most important, his children. You may no longer be a husband, but you'll always be a dad. In the divorce process, this comes down to 3 key concerns: physical custody, decision-making, as well as financial support. Each of these is important, and it's important that you choose a lawyer that cares as much about these issues as you do.
Schedule an appointment with one of Cordell & Cordell's Dallas-Fort Worth area attorneys. Offices in Dallas, Fort Worth, and St. Louis. CordellCordell.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for joining us live, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media channels, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of comments coming in already, including about all the downtown situations, Title 42, a lot of pithy phrases that we keep breaking down here, whether it be Title 42 or specifically Prop K, that has been the overwhelmingly most talked about in my incredibly unscientific study of what is coming up on this current election, of which there are a number of issues, don't get me wrong, but Prop K is definitely taking up all the air in the room. And so to talk further about that, as we continue talking with the groups involved and talking further about this, we are joined here in studio right now by Andrea Hutchins, President and CEO of the El Paso Chamber. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely happy to have you all on to talk further about this because, of course, we have talked previously both with the proponents of Proposition K and also with some of the groups that have been doing primarily the No Way Prop K campaign. Y'all's has been primarily focused on, as you, for those in the radio audience, you do have a No Way on Prop K button on as well.
We're besties.
As you also do have an El Paso Chamber t-shirt on, as you were doing some efforts out and about in the community today, right?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So we a couple of times a year go out in different parts of the community and do a walkabout Wednesday. So today was that day.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that cooler inside here, thankfully. And so, but the major one that you have of the groups that are involved in this, the PAC that you all primarily working with and on this, El Pasoans for Prosperity PAC, the primary way you all put this forth, again, for those in our radio audience, is the Vote No, Prop K Won't Work, Raises Taxes kind of shortish tagline. I mean, there's a whole lot of different ways that's put this, but that's the kind of, I guess, consistent sign that's also at the bottom of most of the then flyers and things you all are putting out, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when it comes to the issues and how y'all came about this position, what was the decision process to come out about it this way and to go about this campaign?
Sure. So we had somebody look at the exact verbiage of the charter itself and break down, worst case scenario, if this gets voted in and all 8 of these items that are in the charter get enacted, what is that going to mean for the consumer, for the taxpayer, and ultimately for small businesses? So when we as the chamber look at advocating for small businesses, it's partially our job to be able to inform and educate those members of ours as well as the business community at large. And so when we hired a consultant to look at the economic impact of the charter itself, we looked at very specific verbiage that's in there, and folks that are saying that it's taken out of context. It's verbatim. If you look at our 62-page analysis that's available on our website, elpaso.org/advocacy, we took the charter language verbatim. And what I mean by that is, folks have said, well, you don't have to get rid of gas stoves. Well, that's true. You can keep your gas stove. There just won't be any gas to go to it because it's not renewable energy. And so if you look at the charter amendment itself, it calls for 100% renewable energy, which means that El Paso Electric's current plan to utilize a variety of energy sources to come to a clean and carbon-free footprint, that is not the same thing. So people are comparing apples and oranges when they talk about these different types of energy and not understanding that renewable energy is very expensive. And when we talk about, that's not going to cost you any money because it's not written in the charter, you're a consumer. So the consumer and the taxpayer ultimately have to pay that bill.
So, of course, the major parts that have come out on this actual item and on, again, Proposition K, of course, this is make a note, as we often have, that for the we went through the not full text, but some of the major points, including on, appliances, impact to residential buildings, and things like that. With the proponents, in some cases, the authors of some of the language within Prop K, that's available over on our YouTube channel, that full 2 hours and change that we did with them, breaking all of that down, that we brought some of on air. One of the major impacts, particularly when it comes to the power generation aspect of it, the all available efforts clause that is in there within it. Of course, the I believe it was the Points Consulting memo that you all had, that 62 pages that you're referencing there, out of the organization based in Idaho that produced that. That one points to, impacts of it, though. When we're actually looking at the language of Proposition K, again, if enacted, as is, of course, currently at issue with, again, early voting over, we have the actual election day coming up then on this weekend. Well, that would take about 8 to 10 years. So as much as there has been a lot of input from various different sources on this and back and forth, one of the more consistent ones, the ones that I find myself referencing most often, is the city's study on it. When it looks at some of those specific costs of basically everything but the purchase of, or whatever would be done to have the municipalization of El Paso Electric. And that one puts the cost at about $4 million and change per year as like a budget line item for that department that would be created, and about $150 million in change, 154, 155, in that range, when it comes to the actual infrastructure that is being called for within it. So on those aspects of it. What are some of y'all positions and y'all's concerns, frankly, as you're all still, again, coming out against Prop K?
Sure. So, obviously the city's analysis just looked at city facilities. So
Sure.
it didn't look at, a variety of other things, including El Paso Water, who did their own study and their own analysis and came out with a price tag of $140 million. So when we look at $140 million for El Paso Water, $155 for the city, where's the numbers for the school district? Where are the numbers for the sheriff and for the county and for all of the other government entities who are going to fall within this? I think if you look at the particulars of how much this is costing the government entities alone and how much it would cost our small businesses and residents here in El Paso to do the same, I think it starts making the numbers in our study not look so crazy.
Now, of course, we've been having a lot of conversations and a lot of different opinions that are coming out on this. When it came to actually making the decision to go forth with this campaign, then, I mean, it has been, of course, on our airwaves and a lot of other different media outlets in town, mailers. This is one of, I'm going to call it better part of a dozen, if not more, different pieces, either from y'all's pack or other ones related to it on this decision. Go about it that way. What was the process behind that?
To go about like the campaign itself?
Yeah.
So when we looked at having the study done, that was way back in October. So we put
Okay.
the study together and then the actual analysis was completed in January. When we saw how stark those numbers were and really starting to, kind of think about the momentum that we have here in the community with everything that's happening at UTEP and with nearshoring and onshoring and all of the fantastic economic development opportunities that are happening in our community. And then we started realizing that when we were out talking to people about this, that the language itself was very confusing. And then we started talking that the charter language itself was confusing.
Okay.
Then we started talking to people who had signed the charter and said that they didn't know what they were signing.
The petition calling for it.
Exactly. So when they signed the petition over the summer, they felt like they were kind of duped into signing something that sounded really good. It sounded like it was for, just clean air, good environment, and didn't have a price tag associated with it. So they didn't feel like they were getting the whole story. So obviously, as the forefront business forefront nonprofit here in the community that looks out for the business community,
Sure.
it's our responsibility to make sure that our businesses are taken care of and protected and educated. And that kind of comes along with creating a positive business climate in the El Paso community. So in order to do that, we have to make sure that it is not, overly burdensome to do business here in El Paso, that businesses aren't going to have to close shop and move someplace else, that there's people that are going to be living here to work in these businesses. And if something like Prop K were to come, to fruition and all of the price tag that comes with it were to come to fruition along with it, it could be detrimental to our economy. And we do stand by the numbers that are in our economic impact analysis. If you go to our website or if you go to Points Consulting YouTube, you can see a breakdown of how he came to the conclusions that he did. He's been in business for 15 years. Certainly an economist like that wouldn't, continue to go to bat on his own numbers if there weren't some volition there. So when we look at, as a chamber, what our role is in the community, we felt like it was important that the business community and the voters alike were educated about the issue, especially because the charter amendment itself does not have a single price tag in it. And the way that the language is on the
Sure.
ballot, it doesn't tell voters how much it's going to cost. So it was somebody's responsibility to make sure that people were aware of that. And when the city tried to do it, the group from Sunrise filed an ethics complaint against them for trying to go around to community meetings and educate voters about how much it was going to cost. So it's obvious that they don't want that information to be shared. And when it is shared, they call it lies.
Going back to for just a minute to the different groups that are involved in this again, y'all, says the vote no, Prop K won't work and raises taxes. And again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Andrea Hutchins, president and CEO of the El Paso Chamber. So some of the information you can find there, including their site, elpaso.org. Simple enough, elpaso.org, but also some of the other things that we've shared previously, and I'm sure we'll link up again here, probably if someone hasn't dropped that already, to the study, among other things. We'll post that up here. But again, y'all's is primarily the, vote no, Prop K, but again, there are the other ones, such as No Way, Prop K. Again, some of the other groups, such as like Project Veritas, I've seen around town doing like the roving billboards, also the Consumer Energy Alliance, which we've talked with previously as well in the recent weeks on their aspects and interest in it. Do you consider these complementary efforts, or are these separate, or kind of how does that come about?
Well, I consider them common sense for most people who read the charter, right?
Mm.
So, to me, I know that there's been a lot of focus on the chamber's study,
Sure.
and those are very, very stark numbers. But I think for most individuals, when they start reading the nuanced language of the charter itself, it is scary to consider that if you look at Section 9.2E of the charter, it identifies any business that services the fossil fuel industry
Mm.
as fossil fuel industries themselves. So little things like that that I think get, often brushed aside by the group who wrote this. But if you're outside of the city limits and you're now deemed as a fossil fuel industry, because maybe you're a plumber who works for a fossil fuel industry and you're now deemed fossil fuel industry yourself,
Mm.
who gets to make those decisions, right? And so I think that there are a lot of questions about a very vaguely written policy that is actually part of our city's charter. So this isn't an ordinance. This isn't something that, if it's passed and the city council doesn't like it, they can just make little tweaks and amendments
Mhm.
to it. It will actually get enacted. And the only way that it can be changed is through another vote or
Mm.
through court battles. And guess who gets to pay for court battles? You as the taxpayer does. So I think it's rightful that many other organizations besides the chamber have come out against this and have, taken to their own campaign initiatives because I think it really is a scary thought that, one group could have such an economic impact on our community. And especially if you're outside of the city limits of El Paso, those folks don't get a say in any of these things.
And that has certainly come up here. We're going to get into those studies and kind of the back and forth and some of the specifics of them here in just a bit. But on that one point you just brought up on basically the prospect of legal action, that one has not been as focused on because that's one of the more speculative elements of this. It would depend on actions being taken by, say, other groups, the attorney general for the state of Texas, potential things like that. Is there anything specific that you all have looked at in your analysis on what could be done there, what the potentials are, or as much as that may be forecasting and a little bit of crystal ball work, what some of those future impacts might be, again, if this item were to be passed?
Sure. So there's 8 key components of the charter, and I truly do think that each one of them come with their own issues. I already pointed out Section 9.2E,
Sure.
and I talked about the water piece. There are blatant, if you go to the just Google Texas water rights, there are blatant violations of the Texas water rights code, if you will, currently, and that doesn't even include some of the things that could be at the federal level, right? So saying
okay.
certain industries don't get water, I don't know that that is legal anywhere in the United States. Additionally, purchasing, and I know that the folks who wrote Prop K like to say municipalizing, but it's still going to cost money. The taxpayers still have to pay for it, right? So purchasing, municipalizing, however you want to name it, I can guarantee you that there's going to be lawsuits around that. And should they also come from El Paso Electric themselves, you as the taxpayer get to pay El Paso Electric's bills, their legal bills. So I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that. So not only, do you get to pay the city's legal bills, but you also get to pay El Paso Electric's legal bills. So, when you look at, like I said, the very nuanced language of, who fossil fuel industries are and the rights that you're taking away from businesses, especially in the state of Texas, there's another thing that people, are more than welcome to Google: the fossil law. It is in direct violation of that as well. So I think, especially in Texas, that there's some things that something like this are just going to be a breeding ground for lawsuits.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Andrea Hutchins, CEO and president of the El Paso Chamber. Again, elpaso.org for information on them, some of the studies and information we're talking about, including, of course, their advocacy efforts, among other things. But got to take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we're going to talk more about those studies, the specifics of them, the back and forth on that. But we got to take that break right now. So we'll be back right after this with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Phone lines a little bit later, as we usually do, delving into some of those comments as well. But in any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A review of City of El Paso gas cards found that taxpayer money covered significant fuel usage by 2 city council members in 2022. The internal audit was shared today. City Rep Cassandra Hernandez of District 3 purchased the most fuel last year, totaling more than 1,900 gallons in 112 transactions at a cost of more than $6,600. The review stated that the data indicates that 2 or more vehicles were being fueled by her gas card. District 6, which was at the time represented by former city rep Claudia Rodriguez, purchased the second highest amount of fuel, totaling 1,400 gallons and 86 transactions at a cost of more than $5,200. City Council plans to discuss the findings of that audit in a public meeting tomorrow. In southern New Mexico, residents in Doña Ana County came out against a proposed park in their neighborhood, saying that it'll bring more traffic and crime. The county has said it wants to build a park along the banks of the Rio Grande, but dozens of residents who live along Shalem Colony Trail spoke out strongly against the project at a public meeting last night. The county says it'll take the feedback into consideration. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Roadworks wrapping up on the I-10 this afternoon, so traffic delays are rapidly disappearing. I-10 westbound still has a 7-minute backup from Wrestler up to Trans Mountain. Slow traffic Global Reach southbound from Liberty Expressway down to Montana is a 30-minute delay. Heavy traffic northbound Mesa Street from the downtown exits up to Donovan Drive with 11-minute delays. And police are still working an injury accident of Stanton and Maine. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Still seeing lots in the way of cloud cover overnight through tomorrow morning, and a disturbance moving through the atmosphere will give us a very slight chance of a gusty shower for the overnight, about a 10% chance. We'll see lows in the 50s and 60s. For your Thursday, not quite as warm tomorrow with highs down into the lower 80s, 10% chance of a morning shower. For your Friday, mostly sunny, breezy to windy, high in the mid 80s. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com, and I sell custom blinds designed for do-it-yourselfers. Unlike stock blinds offered at big box retailers, Blindster blinds are custom made for your windows and shipping is free. Don't hire an expensive pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Tara, quote, "My doctor wanted me to do saline rinses for my allergies, but I've never been able to successfully use a neti pot. Navage uses suction power, so it's foolproof. There are nights when I'll have particularly bothersome allergies. I'll bust it out, and the results are immediate. It's such a relief. It's become a lifesaver," unquote. She's one of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso. Weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. And let's talk El Paso.
This week on Red Pilled America, should artificial intelligence be stopped? To find the answer, we speak to an AI expert who tells us where AI is going. Listen to Red Pilled America on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. A lot of commentary has been coming in there and a lot of different points so far. points in a very generous tone, I might say. But otherwise, still continuing in our conversation here as we're continuing to be joined in studio by, again, Andrea Hutchins, CEO and president of the El Paso Chamber. Thank you very much for sticking around with us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're talking even further about Proposition K. Again, have been talking about both proponents and opponents on this, and you all are firmly in the opponent camp again, based on the just stuff coming to my house, the presences that have been online and in various different social medias, as well as on our own broadcast. The vote no, Prop K won't work, raises taxes being the main branding for that. So we were referencing a couple of times and have been referencing over recent months, let's just put it that way, as soon as basically this ballot was settled, the points consulting analysis, that again, roughly 60 pages and change that you all had commissioned for that, the company out of Idaho. And on those were some of the, there have been even further numbers put forth than here. Here's one. Prop K takes $32.8 billion from El Paso's economy as one of the ones that, again, you all have put out as part of that. But from that initial study, I want to focus on that one for a second. That one mentioned very specifically a like $7 to $8 billion wage loss and about 170,000 jobs. Can you talk a little bit about that, the reasoning that came up and how that was come about?
Sure. And I'm definitely going to send you a link to the YouTube video that the consultant who put together, the study itself, because he gets really into the details on this. So, I think one of the biggest issues that people are not understanding about Prop K is that if El Paso Electric does not have water, they cannot generate electricity. Their current capability for producing electricity with the renewals that they have is about 5%. Now, that's going to go up a little bit with their purchase from the solar field plant over in New Mexico, but that was a significant investment. And so, to do that year over year, our consultant was finding that their additions in investment would be 33 times greater than what their current investments are year over year. And until the 15-year mark when the charter would be fully enacted. So 33 times per year higher electric bills than what you're paying now for residents and businesses, because despite what people are telling you, somebody has to pay that bill. So if El Paso Electric is investing 33 times more per year than what they are currently, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that someone has to pay that utility bill, right? So when you think about that, thinking about the number of businesses that would close, when you think about the number of people who would likely move, it's not a stretch to look at those overall economic impact numbers that we were putting together. In addition, if you look at what it would take to ramp up to those numbers, and if you were to outlaw all fossil fuels after 2030, that would mean that only a certain percentage of the time you would turn on your light switch and there would be power available. Some of the folks who wrote in favor of Prop K, they've been using video footage of dust storms and blaming that on climate change and showing how terrible the dust storms here in El Paso. I'd just like to point out that solar doesn't work when it's dusty outside, right? And so it doesn't work at night. And despite what people are saying, El Paso Electric has done a good job of diversifying their electric sources, and they do utilize nuclear. They use carbon credits. There's a number of ways that they are planning on, and I don't want to speak for El Paso Electric, but if you go to their website, it's there. There's a number of ways that they are planning on getting to a net carbon neutral or carbon free plan.
Right.
People keep saying that that's the same as the charter. It is fundamentally different. Their plan to be carbon free does it includes renewable, right? But it's not only renewable.
And I will say that, again, speaking about the interview that we did with the Proposition K, both, Sunrise El Paso, the Climate Policy Coalition, and again, some of the adjacent organizations, Justicia Fronteriza, among other things, they made actually a very similar point on the idea that the carbon-free by 2045, or they're the billboards around town and other ads that have been running in different media spaces from El Paso Electric on this point. They made the point themselves, as can be seen during that video that's again available over on our YouTube, about the differences on this, mentioning carbon credits, other sources of generation, nuclear, of course, among them here. But even within the climate charter, the policy itself, it does mention the idea of hydrogen production and things like that. So, and how that would not be nuclear production of that would not be considered. I think it's a pink or green, non-green rather. generation. In any case, they made a similar point that this is not the same thing that they're talking about when it comes to the way we're talking about again. So we're talking in terms of those goals, you're referencing that 80% of those 100% by like 2030, 2035, and then by 2045 for 100% renewable use, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
100%.
So when it comes to the study itself, then, I mean, some of the criticism that has come out specifically about that, there's a few articles I'm going to reference here specifically from El Paso Matters, as we did in that interview with the Prop K proponents, is that climate charter could cost thousands of jobs, billions in earning, chambers say. And then one of the follow-up says is that climate charter claims based on faulty assumptions, critics say, as some of the response was coming in on this from, again, some of the groups involved in Proposition K and its proponents of it, that basically, I guess the way I'd boil it down to, that the response to it is that the study that you all put forth is based on the bottom following out. Basically, that there would be a dogmatic approach to this, that, oh, if it's not completely renewable, therefore it can no longer exist, kind of thing, and saying that that is not the intention, nor would it be the effect that would be put into place. And among other things, that the actual municipalization, the effect on power generation by purchasing of it would take a better part of a decade, given that that's the kind of longitudinal study that is being looked at by the city of El Paso, that, 8 to 10 years, $12 million, give or take, cost to look at the feasibility of even the purchase or other methods to municipalize El Paso Electric. So when it comes to that part of their criticism to this study, saying that, yeah, the nearly $8 billion and $170,000 jobs that would be lost based on y'all's study is based on a faulty assumption of, again, everything just coming to a halt if certain benchmarks aren't being hit. How do you all respond to that?
So I find that incredibly ironic. If you look at the actual report that is referenced from El Paso Matters, the second bullet point talks about renewables renewables in the climate charter being the same as El Paso Electric's goals. And you yourself just said that the people who, have put this charter amendment together realize that they are different. So the study that actually looked at our study, which, it's ironic that people are spending so much time looking at our
Studies back
study.
and forth
Right,
here a lot,
exactly.
yeah.
So, but nobody has actually taken a look, from the charter's perspective about what's faulty there. So instead, folks are spending a lot of time looking at our study instead of telling the voter how much this is going to cost from their side. A couple of times I've heard from the folks who wrote Prop K that they actually didn't have enough money to do this. And I would argue that they had $100,000 at the start of this. And instead of putting together legislation that wouldn't be argued as intensely as we have, or that, wouldn't find itself with so many opponents, they instead spent that money on a campaign, paying people $2 per signature. And, obviously now in this effort. So, they have had money, that they're not poor. They just chose to spend it on things that would not necessarily be, informing the voter. Going back to the study and the questions that you had, specifically for the El Paso Matters article, I did share a lot of that information in a reply with Bob. He chose not to print it. But we did share a lot of things like the reference sources that they use in the report about our report include such illustrious things as bobvila.com and their own reports. So when you look at the way that their report looked at our report, I find the entire thing to be biased and faulty. And if you start by looking at the very second bullet point in their own report, it starts with a faulty assumption itself.
So again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is, again, Andrea Hutchins, CEO and president of the El Paso Chamber. Again, some information on them and part of their advocacy, among other things, is, of course, elpaso.org. You can find information on this. And again, we've also linked some of the studies that we're referencing and the studies back and forth, among other things, over on, again, the YouTube channel we had the whole interview with the Prop K proponents. So that is, of course, that. And so there have been further studies that have come out. I believe the most recent one that was the Idea Smiths LLC decarbonization in the El Paso region, a commentary on the technical and economic feasibility. That one, not quite as extensive, about 23 pages. 23rd page is a half bit of it that goes into the idea of potential savings. I mean, it goes into hydrogen, even geothermal. And so a whole kind of, again, longitudinal look at all of it, even if arguably, and I think very much from the proponents, that the Prop K itself is very much focused on solar. I mean, that's the primary thing that it both instructs the city to focus on within its own facilities, if again passed, and would look at. It has the most definitions and the most verbiage within it. So one of the questions that has come up kind of out of that one, but also kind of from the city parts of it, have been on the idea of there being savings that come from this, particularly in, cost savings to city facilities, and therefore kind of wiping out those. Again, you mentioned earlier that there were the different levels of cost here, but focusing just on the city side of it right now, that the idea of saving those electrification costs by doing renewables overall makes at least that part of it pay for itself over the lifetime of, through the 2045 kind of time frame we're talking about, once that 100% would be achieved. So when it comes to that specific aspect of it, is that something that you all still find yourself opposed to if it were to be removed from Prop K, or its inclusion here kind of invariably makes it unviable to even consider separately?
So I think it's very duplicative of Prop C. I know that Prop C is only starting off as an initial plan, but the way that government works, especially government that includes, feedback and inclusivity from the business community, it happens over time and with a well thought out plan.
So I just want to interject real quick. Prop C you're referring to from the previous election, not the current Prop C. There is another Prop C.
Yes.
There's besides K, there's A through J on this ballot. So not to confuse that, Prop C was the climate action plan that was part of the 3-part bond that was put forth by the city of El Paso that had roughly $5 million allocated towards it. It was approved by voters.
Yes, exactly. And so thank you to your point. So that is one of the first aspects in the road to creating a more eco-friendly and green community. If Prop K were to pass, they would still have to take those same action steps. The only difference between Prop K and Prop C when it comes to a climate department in the city is that Prop K goes several steps further to also create a commission that would be on par to the city manager and report to city council. So it's kind of creating a new form of government, if you will. There's a lot of aspects of the climate commission where they would be involved with business, including approving of permits, being able to interject themselves in, city purchasing and contracting. Those things impact business. So when we look at, again, the chamber's involvement, there's a lot of nuanced language in there that people are not necessarily familiarized with, which is, again, why we have been so very vocal about all of this.
Okay, so again, Prop C, that one has been put forth and some analysis has been coming out. We've talked about this in recent days on its own as being a 18-month study that is basically starting to get underway now-ish. I don't know if it's actually technically begun yet. I think I've seen some of the requests for proposals or the consulting firms on that one here. So what was y'all's position on Prop C as again was in the previous ballot?
So we were pro Prop C, actually wrote a press release about that and encouraged our members to go out and vote for Prop C. The chamber has been involved with a number of initiatives with local businesses and I've only been with the chamber since August, so we have plans for more. Unfortunately, I've been spending a lot of time on a campaign here lately. Would much rather spend my time on some more productive things, when the opportunity comes. But I'll give you for instance of one of those things that we're looking at. So the EPA on the 7th of March came out and said that were it not for the pollution that is coming from that El Paso would actually be an attainment city, meaning that the climate in El Paso would pass the muster for the EPA and the federal government, if not for the pollution that's coming across the border. So it doesn't, again, take too much of a rocket scientist to realize that we need to be working with our partners across the border to help reduce their emissions as well. The burden should not be all on the taxpayer of El Paso while nothing changes in Mexico and our climate then stays identical, but we have a bunch of broke taxpayers here in El Paso. So I think that there needs to be much more of a regional approach when it comes to something like this. The chamber has taken a leadership role in a variety of ways when it comes to transportation. When we're looking at transportation, we look from Santa Teresa all the way out to Tornillo. And so we look at things from a regional standpoint, looking down to Chihuahua and up on, through northern New Mexico here and how that impacts our economy here in our region. We plan to do similar things when it comes to the climate and working with our business community on ways that we can improve and work together. There are a number of initiatives at a global, scale that we could bring here to El Paso if partnerships were formed and we were able to, again, take a more regional approach to things. And the chamber certainly has no problems with being involved in a leadership role in that aspect.
Last question for you. We've covered a lot on Proposition K and y'all's position on it. And of course, there's a lot more to be said, more than we could fit into one entire show as we've even tried. when it comes to the actual membership of the El Paso Chamber, of course, y'all's membership is public. You have a board of directors, and it's been noted by some, particularly the proponents of this, that there are members of there, including, El Paso Electric itself and other oil and gas industry businesses, Texas Gas Service, among other things, that are represented here. So some of the accusations have effectively been that you're representing those interests to the detriment of the community as a whole. How do you respond to that?
So we have over 1,000 members, and we had over 100 businesses sign on to a pledge to specifically oppose Prop K publicly. A lot of people have, been afraid to come out publicly against Prop K because they're afraid that it's going to make their business look anti-climate. But privately, they will tell me that they're afraid of what it's going to cost their business if it were enacted. And so when we look again at what our role is for the business community, it's to educate and inform. We have a variety of businesses, from very small businesses that include one person all the way to very large businesses like El Paso Electric. They are all still paying one membership, right? So, when you look to become a member of the chamber, we're certainly not saying, El Paso Electric gets a break, right? Because they're a huge company. That's not the way that this works. And when we have, board positions on our board of directors, we also look to have one representative from one company on our board of directors. I can tell you that we do have El Paso Electric and Texas Gas is on our board of directors, but we have 25 members on our board of directors, and they get one vote just like everyone else does. So when we look at our overall membership, we did survey them before we went out with this initiative, and overwhelmingly, almost 80%, those who responded, were against Prop K.
Again, guest right now has been Andrea Hutchins, CEO and president of the El Paso Chamber. Again, information for them and the details and those information bits that we were just talking about, elpaso.org. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us about some of these details, some of these things. And you all have upcoming events coming up too, right?
We do. We have other fun things that are not just related to Prop K. So thank you for allowing me a minute to talk about this. So, we have a lot of events going on, but one in particular that I want to talk about, May 20th. We are hosting the first ever community military ball. So it's going to be at the convention center. If you've never attended a military ball, this is your chance. I know a lot of people live in El Paso and they hear about them and they see fancy dresses downtown, but they never have the opportunity to partake in that. So we are going to be starting on the 20th at 6 p.m. with a tequila tasting at the the convention center downtown.
Sure.
And then we'll be going on, with the traditional type of things, toast, grog bowl. However, we are not going to have a boring speaker. We are only doing live entertainment. So we are very excited about that. If people are interested, they can go to armedforcesdayball.com to purchase tickets. They will be on sale through May 16th.
Excellent. So again, thank you very much for coming by and talk to us about all these things, as we have a lot more coming up, I'm sure, as we get closer to Election Day. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely happy to do so. And now we are super out of time for this hour, and we got to take that next break right now. We'll go ahead and open up those phone lines as we normally do, even if we'll definitely be pushing past the top of the hour right now. So that number to call if you want to get on the line is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break and the top of the hour news here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A review of City of El Paso gas cards found that taxpayer money covered significant fuel usage by 2 city council members in 2022. The internal audit was shared today. City Rep Cassandra.
Downtown delays have disappeared on the I-10
News
east
Radio
and westbound.
690.
Heavy traffic still on northbound Mesa Street from Texas Avenue up to Donovan Drive with 8-minute delays. Slow traffic on the spur eastbound Liberty Expressway from the Gateway to the Loop. It's a 5-minute backup. And a crash reported eastbound Paisano Drive at the 110. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Tudor Dixon Podcast.
Coming up on the next episode of the Tudor Dixon Podcast, Kyle Olson joins the show to talk about the madness at Michigan State University. Banned words? Are our kids too sensitive? Be sure to catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Car crimes are on the rise. Protect yourself and your valuables this holiday season. When you park your car, always lock it down. Never leave keys in your vehicle. Never leave your windows down. Don't leave your valuables in plain sight, or you might return to a terrible sight. Try to park in well-lit areas. And most importantly, always lock it down. Brought to you by the Insurance Council of Texas and the Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Authority. Learn more at lockitdowntx.com.
At El Paso Electric, we're working to meet our goal of providing 100% carbon-free energy by 2045. By next year, we'll double our renewable energy resources. In 2 years, we'll more than triple it. In 3 years, our solar output will increase almost 8 times. We're already 50% carbon-free in 2023, but there's more work to do. Because a clean energy future is more than a goal. It's a reality we're working towards every day. Visit epelectric.com/clean energy to see our plan.
Pamela played soccer but had trouble breathing. Our team diagnosed and treated the problem. We are the only pediatric board-certified radiologists and experts in the region. There's only one El Paso Children's Hospital.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Cobb County Police in Georgia are joining the search for the Atlanta mass shooting suspect. A large police presence is gathering and searching in the Vinings, Cumberland, and Truist Park areas just north of Atlanta. They're hunting for 24-year-old Dion Patterson, the man suspected of killing one person and injuring 4 others at an Atlanta medical center. CNN reports Patterson was a former Coast Guard member and was at the medical center for an appointment. He was accompanied by his mother, and Atlanta police say she is cooperating. Republicans are issuing a subpoena to the FBI to obtain a document that allegedly links President Biden to a criminal scheme. Lisa Taylor has more.
In a letter to the DOJ and FBI, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer said a whistleblower claims a document in the FBI's possession describes an alleged scheme involving then Vice President Biden and a foreign national relating to the exchange of money for policy decisions. Comer said the information raises concerns Biden may have engaged in a bribery scheme. No specifics of the allegations were provided in the letter, which was authored jointly with Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley. Both are leading investigations into Hunter Biden and the Biden family. I'm Lisa Taylor.
The Federal Reserve is raising interest rates again.
The committee raised the target range for the federal funds rate by a 0.25 percentage point, bringing the target range to 5 to 5.25%.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell added that the Fed is committed to bringing inflation down to 2%. The attorneys for former President Trump say he's not going to testify, and they're not going to call any witnesses in the civil trial against him. Late Wednesday, Trump's deposition was played for the jury, and for the first time, they heard Trump say the rape accusation by writer E. Jean Carroll isn't true, and that it's a disgusting made-up story. The jury will hear more of Trump's deposition Thursday. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Ukraine is denying any involvement in an alleged drone attack targeting the Kremlin. A senior Ukrainian official in a tweet said Kyiv had nothing to do with the attempted drone strike, arguing the country is engaged exclusively in a defensive war and does not attack targets in Russia. He said the allegations from Moscow suggest Russia is planning a large-scale terrorist attack against Ukraine. New York City is bracing for more migrants with a COVID-related immigration policy expected to be lifted next week. Scott Pringle reports.
Well, right now, there are about 200 asylum seekers arriving in New York City daily, but that number is expected to grow with Title 42 expiring. That's the COVID-related policy allowing Border Patrol to send migrants back to Mexico, sending on May 11th. Well, Texas Governor Greg Abbott says he's resuming sending buses of migrants to the Big Apple and other cities. Mayor Eric Adams.
Governor Abbott sent migrants only to cities where they're black mayors and is undermining our cities.
Abbott says he's simply providing relief to the overrun and overwhelmed border communities.
Drug maker Eli Lilly reports its new Alzheimer's drug significantly slowed progression of the disease in a clinical trial.
It's an infusible antibody medication called donanemab, and Eli Lilly says its 18-month study shows patients who received the monthly infusion showed a 35% lower decline in memory, thinking, and ability to perform daily activities. Lilly has just released trial data on the company's website and says it plans to seek FDA approval of the drug in the next few months.
Sarah Lee Kessler reporting. 3-time Olympic medalist Tori Bowie is dead at 32. Her agent told CNN the American sprinter and long jumper was found dead in her Florida home. The cause of death is not known yet. Her management company wrote in an Instagram post that they're truly heartbroken and asked for privacy. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by the Tudor Dixon Podcast.
Coming up on the next episode of the Tudor Dixon Podcast, Kyle Olson joins the show to talk about the madness at Michigan State University. Banned words? Are our kids too sensitive? Be sure to catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
When your back pain is your foot's fault. This is Dean's story.
It was affecting me when I walked, which is a kind of a common activity.
Dean's chronic back pain had become a pain in the you-know-what.
At first, I just sort of ignored it, but eventually everything catches up to you.
Physically and mentally.
Back pain affects your mood. It really does.
But that's not the only connection Dean made.
A friend of mine suggested I go to the Good Feet store. I was a little confused. Why would I need a foot store? My feet are fine.
But he thought, what the heck? He had nothing to lose.
They took impressions of my feet, and with the footprint, they were able to get me a personalized arch support that lifted pressure off my back.
So the source of your back pain was right under your toes.
It's something maybe I should have known, but I found out in the nicest possible way.
See how arch supports work for you with a free fitting. Find your Good Feet store at goodfeet.com.
Airway Boulevard at I-10.
This week on Red Pilled America, should artificial intelligence be stopped? To find the answer, we speak to an AI expert who tells us where AI is going. Listen to Red Pilled America on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
Gilbert worked in retail and restaurant management for 14 years. It was time for a change.
I recognized where I was at was vulnerable to the whims of the economy.
Then he heard about My Computer Career. Gilbert went for it.
In as little as 7 months, I got all of my certifications at a fraction of a cost for college.
He became an IT pro in just months with zero experience at mycomputercareer.edu.
I can work from anywhere. I have more time for my family as well.
It's not rocket science. It's mycomputercareer.edu.
This is one student's experience. Individual results vary.
In this week's Marketers Report, Chris Brandt, Chief Marketing Officer at Chipotle Mexican Grill, weighs in on the power of audio.
We've used audio to reinforce what we're showing on TV, what we're showing in other digital channels. When your priority is driving reach, boy, everybody seems to listen to the radio.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to the audiences, conversations, trusted influencers, insights, and data you need to grow. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
Only iHeartRadio gives you access to all of your favorite radio stations.
Rover's Morning Glory.
It's The Woody Show.
It's Elliot in the Morning. All of the once-in-a-lifetime events.
iHeartRadio Music Festival.
All of the best free curated playlists. It's everything that rocks. All of the great podcasts for every interest.
This is Freddie Prinze Jr. from the Wrestling with Freddie podcast.
All of the mind-blowing contests.
$20,000.
Awesome.
All of your favorite superstars.
This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Download the absolutely free iHeartRadio app now.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. I will freely admit that I wasn't paying as much attention to the comments as we had them coming by, as we had a few, but some of them appreciating the interview, some not so much, including that's definitely discourse about Glee partaking in villainy, among other things. That's definitely talking about the points that was being brought up there. But again, if you want to get on the line, add your 2 cents. We do have those phone lines open and available. 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot of people chiming in and adding those likes and reacts, of course, including Amber Banda, Bernadette Bandico, Louis Pinato, Rick Reyes, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, Ida Beza Gardner, James Holmes, Ronaldo Rivera, Sean Gardner, and Flaco Jimenez. And I think I had a note earlier about someone sending me something in Messenger. Don't know if that one came through. At least I'm not finding it. So if anytime y'all want to send me anything, and the number of people email me already, Andrew Polk at iHeartMedia.com. So it's IHEART media.com. So, and yeah, a lot of different commentary coming in, and a lot of people putting their perspectives on it, including Arnaldo Rivera saying local politicians and developers have always used sleight of hand presentations. I mean, there's a lot of it. Also, Eric von Holstein Rathlow chiming in, waving along with it, and some commentary about Al Gore and parts of it. Anyway, there's inventing of the internet. Anyway, let's go back into those phone lines now, as we'll, again, a lot of stuff going on. Okay, tell you what, one quick thing I want to make is that on the voter turnout so far, El Paso Matters on this, having the decent breakdown, that about 33,000 voters inside the city limits of El Paso able to vote on the Proposition K, among other things, and that they are looking at, they are calling it that the early voting makeup suggests that Prop K is unlikely to pass, barring an unusual surge in election day voting. Based primarily on the demographics, it's a little under half of all voters that have come out to the polls so far, of the particularly city of El Paso, are 65 and older. And of those under 30, there are only 16,000 of them. So literally, okay, a little bit more than a tenth as much. So I guess they're calling it that shot based on that. This has been one of the bigger off-year elections, neither a presidential or a midterm election year. So that's why I call it an off year, because usually there aren't any of those, huge top of the ballot items drawing it out, except this one certainly has. El Paso Matters, again, further noting that people under 30, more than twice as likely as those over 65s to support phasing out of fossil fuels over time, to rely completely on renewable energy sources, according to national polling. So that's part of it. And I mean, even other things that has been put up as I've been getting texts. And Eric von Holstein Rathlow saying 33,000 isn't a bad for El Paso in a midterm election, or even a non-midterm election. This is not even, there's no congressional seats, anything real national on the ballot this time around, which usually is a not good sign for voter turnout. Not that it ever is. But what I'm trying to make is that even with that, if you count all of the voters in El Paso County, we're at, of the eligible voters, about 7% in change. Let's call it 7.5% and be generous. So better comparatively. Better is a comparative word, and so better than we have been previously. I mean, there have been previous school board elections, or a non-election election, another way to put it. In previous school board election years, we hit barely like 3.5% and barely cracked like 6% when it came to the actual runoff for those very specific races. So we're better than those, but we still have yet to hit double digits. And okay, I am going to call it that we're going to hit double digits of voter turnout. I also want to point out that is an insanely low bar. Like getting 10%, yeah, it's like, but teacher, I got double digits on this test. You'd be like, yeah, go sit in the corner with the dunce cap on. Like seriously, it's not a good thing, but I will take improvements if we could qualify for most improved. Doesn't mean that you are the best, but anyway. You get to the phone lines now. Again, that number to call if you want to add your 2 cents, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Raul in the Northeast on the line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. You know what will affect El Pasoans? The federal government defaulting on the debt over a disagreement between Republicans who say they won't agree to raise the debt limit unless the Democrats agree to their spending cuts. Now, defaulting on the debt would result in a downgrade of government securities. That would result in higher interest rates for everyone. It would accelerate the exodus of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. And it could slow down the economy. Nothing good can come from playing this game. It's unconstitutional.
I'll agree with you on that point.
Says the full faith and credit of the government is upheld.
Yes, it does.
And it's really crazy. It's like a couple arguing about their finances, aware that they spend more than they make, and that they had to go into debt to buy the things that they really need and want, like a home, cars, furnishings, and stuff that they probably didn't really need or could have spent less on. And then one of the two is a spendthrift in one way, and the other wants to work less and bring in less money. So they argue over not paying their debts because they can't agree on future spending and income. That's what's going on right now in Washington, D.C. And again, this will downgrade what would result for those consumers, families. Well, they would get their credit rating downgraded, and their interest rates would go up for future borrowing. So that's what would happen there. Now, hey, El Paso, how do you like plutocrat monopoly electricity? PME, let's call them PME. This is capitalism at its pinnacle. You know, in my utopia, Andrew, and the ideal government economy, customers and taxpayers of plutocrats, monopolies, and oligopolies of their products and services should make money, like the rich people who own these companies. The government makes money, by the way. One of your guys said they don't make money. Yeah, they make money. They make money leasing and selling government lands, or oil and mining companies think they can make money. Now, in fact, Uncle Sam is the biggest landowner. National parks, coastal waters where there are oil wells and platforms. Things that everybody needs shouldn't be privately owned, like the air and the water. And in my opinion, health, property, casualty insurance companies that could be consolidated to create the largest number of insureds and bring costs way, way down. Consumer banking services. The FDIC is already there to protect consumers, and yet the banks went out and made some bad loans and had to be bailed out. Well, across the economy back in the Bush days, Great Recession. Savings bonds. They can sell savings bonds. Mortgage banking, where the FHA and VA and Ginnie Mae and Freddie Mac are already big players. They're already in the game. So taxpayers should make money. I call it people's capitalism. And I'll tell you where we could start. We could start with our Social Security contributions, and they should be invested in the S&P 500 that do a lot of business with all levels of government, federal, state, and local, and the military-industrial complex, and energy, chemicals, telecommunication companies, insurance, banking, pharmaceuticals, transportation, and agriculture. These portfolios would be managed based on one's retirement age, and that means that they would be more aggressive when you're young and more conservative when you get older. It's called asset allocation between stocks and bonds, risk and reward. There's no rocket science to do this. They could do it with AI, and as a giant group, the cost to manage would be insignificant. Better returns, and more importantly, makes everyone a shareholder. I call it, again, people's capitalism with our Social Security contributions. And we could do the same thing for corporate America by eliminating the corporate income tax and raising personal income taxes on higher income earners, like eliminating all these exemptions that they get for like second homes and jets and yachts, you know, like the plan President Biden has, where only people earning over $400,000 per year would see their taxes go up. If you're making $400,000 per year, you're doing really, really well in America.
I wouldn't disagree with you that they're doing really, really well. Wouldn't mind being that position myself. But I got to say, we may be doing some cross purposes when we talk about the government making money. There are certainly revenue generating activities that the government does. I mean, we can see it immediately to our west from where I'm sitting right now. And for all of El Paso, start getting into New Mexico, you pretty quickly run into BLM, Bureau of Land Management land. Don't get it mixed up here. That can be leased out and done for, you know, non-destructive activities by the general public, or least for, like, you know, oil, gas, exploration, farming, ranching, those kind of things, depending on the purpose, suitability of the land, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, there's taxes, fees, excise, sales tax. That's one of the big ones. Part of the reason we saw the surplus, or a larger amount of revenue that was generated in the state of Texas. But I got to say that the reason I'm saying that it should not be a money-making endeavor, specifically, let's talk about this in terms of, and clarify it as profits. The government should not profit off of things, particularly if we're talking about pushing out of private industry. Because, sure, there are certain things that there is a need for that there may not be the willingness or the interest to see done by private industry. In that case, I'm still in favor of, in general, things being offered like grants, loans, incentive programs. The way the state of Texas does it for the most part is by offering essentially tax rebates and stuff like that, public-private partnerships, those kind of things. So those aspects are fine by me, but you start talking about, well, we need to replace private industry. And I mean, single payer insurance is one thing, but talking even replacing of, you know, private, you know, casualty and, you know, disaster issues and insurance along those ways, that starts getting a little bit more along the lines of, we are not even just saying, well, this can be better provided by us, but we're going to be replacing what already exists. There are definitely things along those lines that already exist. So as much as to try to bring this back locally, the idea of the city specifically making money off of El Paso Electric or power generation in general. Again, I'm not saying that cost savings and saving money that way is a bad thing, but if it ends up being where profit is the focus, that starts violating the idea of what government is supposed to be, I gotta say. Because if they're not immediately looking at, okay, what services we can provide, what do we need to do, and therefore what will it take to do that? I mean, sure, taxes being lower would be a great thing. I don't think a lot of people would be opposed to that. But if it starts being a however so much can we actually, what does it take to make the most money, and seeing those kind of like profit maximalization efforts starts being a little bit outside of the scope for what I think most people would think government should be doing. So we got to take that next break right now. Appreciate the point in the call for what it's worth in the local parts of it. We'll get more into these discussions as we get further into the show, cramming in what we can today. So go and take that break right now. Again, if you want to get on the line, add your 2 cents. That number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
El Paso police work in an injury accident Gateway North at Paisano Drive. Heavy traffic on northbound Mesa Street from the downtown exits up to Donovan Drive with 7-minute delays. Southbound Loop 375 slowing from Liberty Expressway to Iron Medics with 5-minute delays. And an accident in the lower valley, Alameda, outside the loop at Rio Vista. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
This week on Red Pilled America, should artificial intelligence be stopped? To find the answer, we speak to an AI expert who tells us where AI is going. Listen to Red Pilled America on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
Okay, so we have the car payment, the rent, utilities,
and the repair bill.
What should we do?
I know. I'm going to CashNetUSA.com. I can apply in minutes, get an instant decision, and if approved, we could have the money in our account as soon as the same business day.
When you need money fast, be the hero. Go to CashNetUSA.com to apply for the money you need now. The exact timing as to when your loan funds will be available will be determined by your banking institution.
At El Paso Electric, we're working to meet our goal of providing 100% carbon-free energy by 2045. By next year, we'll double our renewable energy resources. In 2 years, we'll more than triple it. In 3 years, our solar output will increase almost 8 times. We're already 50% carbon-free in 2023, but there's more work to do. Because a clean energy future is more than a goal. It's a reality we're working towards every day. Visit epelectric.com/clean energy to see our plans.
Finding great people to hire can be like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Their powerful matching technology delivers so many qualified candidates. It's like finding a needle in a needle stack. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. For less hay and more needles, head to ZipRecruiter.
And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. At ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the program, particularly at this point during the show. Phone line's full up at the moment, but keep that number handy, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot of discussion. Yeah, Prop K. Yeah, that's going to take up a whole lot of air in the room, but don't think we're not paying attention to like the immigration and border security situation going on in our area as well, and just a whole lot more. The juggling act we got going on today and these previous weeks feels pretty significant, and we'll continue doing our best here. Again, if you're trying to send me an email, just was checking right now. Don't think I've gotten anything yet. Just make sure you got it right. Andrew Polk, no dots, spaces, nothing. Andrew Polk at iHeartMedia.com. Be happy to look at that there. I'll see if I can post it up there in the comments here in just a bit. But in any case, let's back to those phone lines now. We do have Stephen on the east side here with us right now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey there. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so I was just listening to Raul's call. I think it's kind of interesting, the calls in the past to basically privatize Social Security, because there are people who are Republicans who realize that it is a very poor investment compared to if you put your money into that same amount of money that you put in Social Security your whole life. If you would have put it in something, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, then the return would have been much better. And Republicans realized that a long time ago. When they tried to do it, they were demonized for trying to get rid of Social Security. So we've already discussed this in decades past. Republicans were demonized for doing exactly what Raul just suggested. And this kind of goes back to the, electrical grid, Proposition K, in the sense that anytime government is kind of running things and trying to do things, it ends up being less efficient. It ends up being bureaucracies, waste, just like the education system. The government's involved in all of that. The government's actually involved in healthcare a lot. And think about it. He complains about capitalism. The government agencies have to regulate, or in our system, where power lines go, what kind of power systems, what kind of company can do what and where when it comes to our electrical generation. If you had a pure capitalist system, it would probably work way different, like a libertarian type capitalist system. You would probably have a different company in, let's say, the Northeast, and maybe they're running off of one type of electricity generation. Maybe they're on nuclear, and then you'd have something in the Far East that's running on something else. You would have more competing energy providers in a purely libertarian capitalist system. The way things work now, the government is so heavily involved, you don't really get that kind of competition. So I think Raul's got a lot of those things kind of backwards.
The idea that regulation makes it barriers to entry, I think what you're kind of getting at there, though, and I am not in any way, I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't study or have the qualifications to be able to say what works or what doesn't for entire grid systems. But one of the questions I do have when it comes to, particularly for electrification, is do they have to put up their own lines, or are they going to be on the same lines and therefore they're responsible for a percentage of it? And then in which case, how do you manage, maintain, make sure, etc., that things are being done right? Is it all then at the end user place? How would that affect it with smart meter? I have a lot of questions about competition from that, and I know that it exists other places, but I mean, it definitely hasn't existed here in a significant way. But the investigation and possibilities of that, particularly if people are that concerned about, the monopolization of the market, as we do definitely currently have. But that's not an issue for me at all to say that that is absolutely the case. But solutions around that, as opposed to, like what Prop K puts forward, not sure if that's creates more problems than it solves, those kind of things.
Yeah, it would have had to build up from that way from the beginning in order to have that competition. The way our system works now, what would have to happen is the government would have to say, you have a monopoly, and the government would have to break up El Paso Electric, which is tricky because a lot of their electrical generation is coming from the same place. And like you said, you have to divide up the power lines and those kinds of things.
Right.
At this point, it would be much more difficult to do other than that's different than if you had built up a capitalist libertarian system from the ground up.
I can see what you're saying there. It's kind of one of the questions I kind of wanted to ask our guest from last hour again, Andrea Hutchins, CEO and president of El Paso, the El Paso Chamber, though may not be totally in her wheelhouse. That kind of idea that's been put forth by the city, at least from a city spokesperson, Laura Cruz Acosta, in recent weeks about the parts they'd have to look at with that study about what it would take to potentially even segregate out the city-based versus outside of city-based operations of El Paso Electric, which kind of raises some of these similar type questions I'm getting at there.
Yeah, so and the real reason I called before I got caught up with that other conversation was that I heard this morning, I thought it was interesting, the advertisement from El Paso Electric. I wonder if it's kind of a response to this, or if this ad is older, but have you heard it where they talk about, like, well, we're already doing carbon-free emissions?
Yeah,
so I don't know if that was a response.
I'm sure there's a level of response to it at the very least. I know it didn't originate before, say, the petition effort started. I know it wasn't around before that point, even if maybe the plan was. The way it's being put out has definitely appeared since the start of this year. So I think it would be fair to say that there is a response element to it in the way they're putting it out, as of the existence of their whole electrification plan by renewables, or the whole what's the right way to put it? Carbon neutral, carbon free, however they end up putting it. Part of it was in the plans or not. That I'm not sure about, but yeah, definitely the billboards that have been popping up around town. I've seen at least 3 in different areas of town. And of course, what is also on air. Yeah, it definitely feels like it's been ramping up since, well, in this last couple of months for sure.
Right. And they said, I think in a couple of years, they're going to do 8 times more carbon free production. And by 2045, they're supposed to be completely carbon free. So they're trying to respond, I think, to maybe some of this pressure to go carbon free, which is fine. If it, like I said, I'm all for electrical production from solar panels if it works, if it's a way to keep it maintained when the sun's not shining and it's reliable, and we want everyone in El Paso to pay less money for their electricity because the prices have been getting jacked up lately. Of course, fossil fuels prices went up. You decrease production of fossil fuels, that rate is going to go up, and inflation just causes everything to go up. And so if we can get less expensive electricity, I would be happy for everybody.
Yep, fair enough. And I mean, yeah, I think they put it like 80%. It's very similar time frames. I'll say that. Like one's 2030, the other side, Prop K or El Paso Electric, is either 2030 or 2035, or vice versa, about reaching that 80% renewable generation guide point. And then the carbon neutral generation aspect, again, it's been put forth as, again, including in our interview today, as not being totally apples to apples. So, and then of course, like 2040, 2045, also timeframes for 100% being done that way. Those are all goals been put forth. So given the similarities of it, yeah, I would expect there's a little bit of response there. But that is also one of the reasons why I think on particularly the city's solar plan and the potential of it, even if Prop K, whatever be the outcome of it, of course, if it moves forward, that is probably one of the first parts that would take effect, would be the, again, electrification by renewables of city facilities, among other things, or the beginning of it. But then if this item does fail, I would be interested to see if it could come up in a different way, if it, again, makes the sense that it's being put forth by the proponents.
Yeah, and I would just say, I think I mentioned this last week, if Prop K fails and El Pasoans really do want to do that, then they could come up with a different proposition where they simply just would say, we're not going to try to buy El Paso Electric. We're just going to put solar panels on the roofs of municipal buildings under the current system. And if they want to do that, they could do that as another option.
Yeah, and again, that would be one interesting aspect to see in the aftermath. I mean, one way or another, this is going to be decided, at least in the immediate sense, by the end of this weekend, as we are getting through Election Day again. If you missed early voting, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed in you, but you do have the chance to go out and vote again. Find out where you can vote, the places to do it here. epcountyvotes.com is where I will always end up putting people towards. And again, Election Day, Saturday, May 6th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., all polling places. So if you haven't already voted and you're able to do so, please make your plan to go.
Have a good evening.
I sure think. Thanks for the point in the call. You have a good one there. Tell you what, we got to take that next break right now. We got calls online. We'll get to more of them. And just because I think there was a mention of it yesterday that I may have missed, in any case, for someone saying that they voted, I can't remember who that was, but in any case, thank you for voting. We'll come back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. That phone number again, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. A review of City of El Paso gas cards found that taxpayer money covered significant fuel usage by 2 city council members in 2022. The internal audit was shared today. City Rep Cassandra Hernandez of District 3 purchased the most fuel last year, totaling more than 1,900 gallons in 112 transactions at a cost of more than $6,600. The review stated that the data indicates that 2 or more vehicles were being fueled by her gas card. District 6, which was at the time represented by former city rep Claudia Rodriguez, purchased the second highest amount of fuel, totaling 1,400 gallons and 86 transactions at a cost of more than $5,200. City Council plans to discuss the findings of that audit in a public meeting tomorrow. In southern New Mexico, residents in Doña Ana County came out against a proposed park in their neighborhood, saying that it'll bring more traffic and crime. The county has said it wants to build a park along the banks of the Rio Grande, but dozens of residents who live along Salem Colony Trail spoke out strongly against the project at a public meeting last night. The county says it'll take the feedback into consideration. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
No wrecks on your El Paso freeways right now. A lot of slowing, though. I-10 eastbound from Cotton to Paisano. It's bumper to bumper with 7-minute delays. I-10 westbound is slow. Hawkins to the Patriot with a 5-minute backup. On the spur, eastbound Liberty Expressway from the Gateway to the Loop, it's a 7-minute delay. And northbound Mesa Street still slow with 10-minute delays. Downtown exits up to Donovan Drive. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Still seeing lots in the way of cloud cover overnight through tomorrow morning, and a disturbance moving through the atmosphere will give us a very slight chance of a gusty shower for the overnight, about a 10% chance. We'll see lows in the 50s and 60s. For your Thursday, not quite as warm tomorrow with highs down into the lower 80s, 10% chance of a morning shower. For your Friday, mostly sunny, breezy to windy, high in the mid-80s. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. During Staples Small Business Deal Days, find new deals in store each week. Plus, rewards members get $30 back in rewards when they spend $100 or more. Rewards offer ends May 13th. Limit 1. Redeemable in-store only. Save big for your business at Staples.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Haley, quote, Navage is the best thing I bought. I love it. My nose feels so clear now and I can breathe. I've been struggling with a stuffy nose for weeks. I bought Navage and it's amazing. Or this one. I use Navage every night, could not imagine life without it. I have 5 cats, and before I found Navage, I was a clogged mess. Now I breathe so much better, unquote. Those are 2 of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
Bud Light recently came under fire for partnering with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Will Hill, the executive director of Consumers Research, joins me on The Truth with Lisa Booth. And listen to The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday and Thursday, but you can listen throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Still taking those calls right now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. If you're on the line there, stay there if you want to get on the line. Squeezing what we can before the end of the program here. A lot more coming up this week. We'll tell you about towards the end. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and jump right back in with those. We are joined by Eric on the east side here with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Hello there. Municipally owned electric companies provide a 4% lower cost for consumers than the private sector owned ones on average. So you and Stephen assuming government ran or municipally owned industries will be bad is just your right-wing brainwashing speaking, not logic and data, just mindless ideology and sweeping assumptions and generalizations. And the solar panel and efficiency part of Prop K, I was doing the numbers, more of them, will save the city $275 million in energy costs over 25 years that it would otherwise be wasting paying El Paso Electric. You know, and El Paso Electric CEO is on the board of directors of the El Paso Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Like, it's important to do your research on your information sources and not just believe whoever says the things you want to believe. Like, for example, the popular right-wing propaganda outlet, the Washington Times, was created by a Christian conservative cult leader who claimed to be the Messiah from Korea. Like, this is valuable to know, you know, when assessing the credibility of information sources. Like, the Washington Times has been described as a prominent outlet that propagates climate change disinformation and a forum for the racialist hard right, including white nationalists, neo-Confederates, and anti-immigrant scaremongers. They've also propagated baseless Seth Rich conspiracy theories as well. You know, they're known for promoting numerous baseless and disgraceful narratives they have pushed throughout its history. And Andrea Hutchins, your guest, was the marketing and communications director for that disgraceful organization. This shows that Hutchins has a history of poisoning the masses with shameless disinformation, representing such an Alex Jones-like information source to misinform the public. And, you know, in regards to her talking about the energy costs to consumers that Prop K would be impacted, the Idea Smith study that, you know, was released kind of late specifically says that El Paso Electric estimates that they can achieve 80% carbon-free electricity with almost no change to rates, and 100% carbon-free electricity with a 1.2, 5.8 cent increase on rates by 2040. You know, these are pennies we're talking about. And 21 out of the 23 people on the board of directors for the El Paso Chamber of Commerce, which Andrea Hutchins was representing and misinforming the public on behalf of, had indisputable and direct ties to the fossil fuel industry and wealthy property developers associated with the fossil fuel industry in El Paso. So, you know, again, the opponents of Prop K, they're investing so much money in just providing shameless lies by people who have no respect for the truth or the well-being of consumers, the well-being of taxpayers, and they have zero shame, a history of zero shame, defending the most indefensible organizations like Andrea Hutchins' prior work with the Washington Times as the marketing and communications director for them.
Okay, if you're accusing me of promoting that, this is the first time that's been brought up. Let's make that perfectly clear. So this is not us putting our stamp on any other information source. Let's make that 100% clear. If you take issue with some of her previous work, that's entirely your prerogative. But the thing about the way you do this, by the way, is that you're talking about, oh, well, they're bad and the well is therefore poisoned, I guess is the conclusion you're wanting us to come down to when it comes to this. And therefore, anything they say can no longer be put forth is good. And therefore, you don't actually engage with the points that they are making. Now, we actually ended up addressing the points that are being made, such as the study and the idea that the bottom falling out, as their study puts forth, as it's been described by others, has been seen as unreasonable. She does say that they stand behind the conclusions in their points consulting based out of Moscow, Idaho. And that is a further point that people can make up their decisions about here. But are you really accusing me of promoting the Washington Times by talking with someone who used to work for that?
I addressed a number of the disinformation points that she was promoting. And it's really important to know if the person is working at the highest levels of such a shameless organization that purposely misinforms the public, and now they're telling that's valuable to know to assess the character and credibility, the veracity of some of these claims, which I have specifically addressed. Like the rates and the amount of money that the city taxpayers are going to save. So I'm covering the gamut. I'm addressing the specific points and specifically pointing out that this person has zero qualms with purposely misinforming the public for very, very disgraceful causes. Like it's the opponents of, she called you like a bestie because she knows you're a big opponent of Prop K, purposely misinforming El Paso, your list.
Eric, you're starting to sound jealous here that we're able to maintain relationships with other people. Where are you getting this bestie from? That doesn't even make a lick of sense. Seriously?
That's one of the very first things she says. Oh, you're my bestie. You're not listening to what your propagandists say to you when they come onto your show to misinform the public. You're not.
Dude, if you can find, you have previously claimed that you're going to bring up quotes here. I'll go back and review the tape on that one myself, but I'm going to be fairly certain that I was not referred to as a bestie, considering this was the second time I've had a conversation with Andrea Hutchins. Again, guest that we had on the previous hour as the CEO and president of the El Paso Chamber. I've spoken with her one time previously as we were talking about during the Biden visit earlier this year. Had a chance to interview her in an interview that we did end up airing on our airwaves here. But literally, I mean, this interview came about. We scheduled it yesterday, got it on air for us today here. So again, I would going to go back and review that myself here, but I'm going to be pretty willing to bet money that I was not referred to as a bestie.
Yeah, and on that same note, you've said you've been honored to be the voice of El Paso's rich and corporations.
Well, you gave me that honor.
That's not something to be, honored by, because their interests are rarely ever in the best interests of consumers, the people, the truth, taxpayers. Those are people who specifically misinform the public for the profits of the small few at the expense of consumers and the rich, which Andrea Hutchins represents and is misinforming the public on behalf of.
Again, you bestowed that honor upon me. No one else is calling me that. So do you want me to be mad? Is this just to get my goat? Is that what I was supposed to take away from the title that you bestowed upon me?
No, well, I mean, it should be aware that, the misinformation that right-wing information sources have conditioned you with have caused you to fight for the economic interests of the rich, El Paso's corporations, at the expense of taxpayers and consumers, and you're just not aware of it. But I'm pretty, you're just not aware of it.
Dude, okay, I really want to talk about this with you, but you keep referring to sources that I haven't. I mean, I've never referenced the Washington Times that I'm aware of on this program, nor have I been doing any of these other sources. We make it very clear. In fact, the sources that we do reference are either the studies that we put forth, and again, particularly on this issue, as we mentioned today and did previously, go to our YouTube channel, see the video that we did with the 2-hour and 11-minute change, give or take, interview with the proponents of Proposition K. We have been very focused on trying to explore this issue fully with both the proponents and the opponents. I think at least in terms of days of interviews, we've been pretty close to balanced on that, even if the total amount of coverage edges a bit more towards what has been put forth by the proponents of Proposition K, the length of the interview at the very least. But we put forth all of the sources that we were citing and we were going forth in there. You're not going to find anything besides local sources on that. So again, if you're taking issue with other stuff not being said on this program, I really don't know how to help you, because we reference and we make it very clear what we are citing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the information that you pass along to your listeners is only as good as your own sources. And I know for a fact you consume absurd right-wing propaganda based on your positions on climate change alone, which you deny the science of and have done for off and on for months.
And that's, again, you misquoting me, which straw man, or sorry, that just I'm conditioned by this point to see you putting that there. If you want to talk about my positions on that, I say primarily that I am less concerned with what's going on nationally as opposed to what we do here locally. Changes of climate are a both historic, geologic fact of reality. It changes. And if we're not prepared to respond to that locally, we're going to be having issues. I mean, literally, our landscape is littered with examples of previous cultures, peoples, civilizations that have existed and were no longer viably able to do so because of their inability to respond to changes in climate. If you're unhappy that I don't agree explicitly with you, I really got nothing else for you, because I have my own thoughts, opinions, type of things, and no, I'm not going to pillory people the way you always seem to want me to do so. Maybe not always, maybe that's hyperbole, but definitely like a lot of the amount of time. But the thing is, what we're here on this program to do is to talk about the issues that we can, particularly within our broadcast area, get our hands on. So when it comes to that, you accuse me of us consuming absurdist right-wing media sources. Alex Jones is one of your favorites punching bags here. I cannot think of a single time, and I'll give you the at least 7th, if not 8th challenge to quote me directly, anytime I have actually referenced Alex Jones, except this talk about the fact that Alex Jones was like having court cases going on to him and not like his own personal position. So let's just call that at least, let's call that number 8 challenge of the times you have promised to come back and quote me and haven't. So good luck with that. We're going to try to squeeze in one more call here before we end the program for today. We do have Tom on in Otero County on the line with us right now. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Wow. Hey, Andrew, have you ever thought about drug testing your callers?
I've thought about doing, actually, can you prove that you voted and didn't just do that? But I guess that would be a corollary to it.
Hey, I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's the primary purpose of a corporation?
Legally and usually contractually to make money by providing a service and or production of goods, in a nutshell.
Bingo. And I would tend to say they're probably capitalists, aren't they?
For the most part, that they control capital. Yeah, simple answer, yes.
So if there's such a cost savings to what these people want to do, why wouldn't those evil capitalists be jumping right on it from El Paso Electric Company?
Again, that's, I mean, not exactly the way you're putting it, but one of the questions I have of whatever the fate of Proposition K, obviously that idea of doing this action with solar panels primarily would move forward. But even if it doesn't, if it does have this level of justification behind it, could that be moved forward on its own? Would it be viable to do so? Is one of the, I think, more interesting questions coming out of this election potentially.
Well, if it's that big of a money-making thing like they're talking about, I would think El Paso Electric would already been doing it, wouldn't you?
I mean, they've been investing in renewables. They've been doing it more on like industrial scale as opposed to essentially what Prop K calls for as like installation on buildings or on city property, city land, those kind of things. So maybe, I guess, would be the short answer.
Do you think the city of El Paso really needs another government bureaucracy?
There's a phrase I think about a decent amount of time, that the bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. So again, I'm on specifics on this item here. Again, there's some of the goals of it that I find myself in favor of, some of the methods about it that I find myself less in favor of. But in general, I like specific laws, specific goals, specific action items put into law, because lack of specificity is where I find myself having the most issues with laws.
Well, you know, the utopia that Comrade Raul talked about and your last caller, they've already done it. It's been done right down to the letter. It's a country called Cuba. And it was once in the early 60s, late 50s was a beautiful place. Well, we know how that ended, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other story, yeah. But yes, not that greatest.
That's where we're heading with this. I just got to tell you.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Well, appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
You too.
All right. Oh, geez, we are getting pretty much out of time here. Tell you what, I got to take this next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll tell you what we got coming up for you on some other locally impacting subjects. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this quick break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A crash on I-10 eastbound at the Lee Trevino exit is blocking the right shoulder, causing some brief stop-and-go traffic. I-10 eastbound from Santa Fe over to Paisano Drive, it's a 5-minute delay. Gateway north at Paisano, that earlier crash is cleared. All lanes are back open. And still looking at 8-minute delays northbound Mesa Street from the downtown exits up to Donovan Drive. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
This week on Red Pilled America, should artificial intelligence be stopped? To find the answer, we speak to an AI expert who tells us where AI is going. Listen to Red Pilled America on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
Hey, let's force the city to buy the electric company for $8 billion.
It costs 8 times more than El Paso's budget.
Yeah.
Property taxes would skyrocket. That's an awful idea.
That's Prop K. And that's not all. Prop K shuts off water at some gas stations.
That's crazy. No bathrooms or water to stop a fire?
Small price to pay to stop pollution.
But the Environmental Protection Agency said most of El Paso's pollution comes from international sources, not us.
Let's pass it anyway.
Even if it means raising everyone's electric bills and property taxes and cutting police and firefighters?
Now you get it.
This is the worst idea ever. Who wrote this?
My neighbors did.
How can you call yourself an El Pasoan?
I don't. I'm from Austin.
Austin wrote it. Only El Paso can stop it. On May 6th, vote no on Prop K, the worst idea in El Paso history. Political ad paid for by El Pasoans for Prosperity PAC.
Today is the day. Today is the day you empty your garage and closets of your old tech. Today is the day you hang up on that dial-up modem. Today is the day you tell that old GPS to get lost. Because while Staples recycles old tech for free each and every day, today, during Staples' free Tech Take Back, Rewards members get $10 in Staples Rewards when they recycle their tech. Cut the cord on your old tech and recycle it at Staples. N617. Limit 1 reward per month. Exclusions apply. Visit staples.com/recycling for details.
I studied Spanish in college and never got fluent. But then I tried Babbel.
Want the most effective way to learn another language? In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel's bite-sized lessons will have you learning another language in as little as 3 weeks.
Babbel gets you speaking quickly about things you actually talk about in the real world.
University studies have shown that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a semester of college Spanish. If you want to learn a new language, there's no better way than Babbel. Go to Babbel.com to try Babbel for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Did you know that only 2 in 10 El Paso County students graduate with a bachelor's degree? By supporting Border Youth Athletic Association's mission of educational attainment, you will create a long-lasting impact in our students' lives. Your monthly donation enables 4th through 12th grade students access to after-school programs, providing a safe and healthy environment. BYAA engages and empowers El Paso's future through mentorship and leadership development. We believe every player who gets an education wins. Do you? Go to borderyouth.org and show your support for our youth today.
Rosetta Stone, where language is learned. rosettastone.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. We have talked about a lot of things here today in some better or less terms. Let's just put it that way. But we did have a brief review of some of the things coming up earlier. Apparently the phrase bestie was used, but I believe it was actually in reference to the other complementary anti-Prop K efforts. If anyone called me a bestie on this show, I would feel kind of weird about that, I'll be honest with you. But we'll track that down exactly. And if you actually want to talk about the issues that are affecting us here in the borderland as opposed to whether someone has friends or not, I don't know. But some of the things we got coming up for you. Taxes are, of course, a part that's kind of baked into all of this, so we'll be having a conversation with the Central Appraisal District, which has been setting out those oh-so-fun home valuation notices. I did get my copy of it finally in. I'll be breaking down some of that, not the exact numbers, but some of the percentages. Spoiler alert, yeah, I saw an increase, as most people did, but also the policies, what they have to respond to, and why, if your taxes do go up, they might not be the people you should be. I mean, you can have your own ire, but not the most mad at it, I would argue. Anyway, go on have to end the show, therefore, today, because we are super out of time. Fridays are around the corner, of course, and of course the election. So, and then, May 6th, May 11th, 2 of those red letter days we got coming up for us. So we'll certainly be talking further about those and may dominate some of our future coverage. So we'll have to end the show there for today. Super out of time. I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show here today. We'll do it again as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. So until then, until next time, I want you all to stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A crash on I-10 eastbound at the Lee Trevino exit is blocking the right shoulder, causing some brief stop-and-go traffic. I-10 eastbound from Santa Fe over to Paisano Drive, it's a 5-minute delay. Gateway north at Paisano, that earlier crash is cleared. All lanes are back open. And still looking at 8-minute delays northbound Mesa Street from the downtown exits up to Donovan Drive. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Did you know you can now build a low-maintenance deck using stone with Tanzite stone decking? Tanzite stone does not use any plastic whatsoever. It is decking that's naturally durable, just like everything made with stone. Tanzite stone doesn't scratch at all. The color will never fade. It is not slippery, even when wet, and it stays cool in the sun. Since Tanzite decking is made of stone, it's virtually indestructible. That's why we guarantee it with a lifetime warranty. Discover how incredibly durable and beautiful a stone deck can be. Go to Tanzite.com. That's TANZITE.com. Online, you'll see how it easily installs over any regular wood deck structure, and you can order a sample to test it for yourself. Build a deck with the durability of stone at Tanzite.com. That's TANZITE.com.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook.